Deputy Lieutenant Richard Yar, Rabbi David Kale, Reverend Alan Cobain, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mike, and my wife Lynn and I are the directors of March of Life UK. March of Life events are taking place in over 120 cities and over 20 nations this year to mark Yom HaShoah, including here in the UK, in Cambridge, Bristol, High Wycombe, Bournemouth, Cardiff, and today here on the streets of Belfast at our iconic civil centre where you sit and stand at this moment. It is a great privilege for Lynn and I to see you all make a public stand here again for the 10th year in Belfast, in our nation's capital, at this iconic building, to commemorate the Shoah and raise our voices publicly against anti-Semitism, racism, and discrimination in all its forms, to stand with our Jewish community and the people of Israel at a time when blatant anti-Semitism is taking over the UK cities and calling for the annihilation of the Jews yet again. We cannot remain silent when we see our young citizens being radicalized by an unfiltered social media mistruths that disregard history and write a new ending to the fate of peaceful society living in tolerance and mutual understanding. We are again reminded that when you say something over and over, even if it's wrong, it can become a mistruth. If heard by many, some will even believe it is truth. The Nazis and their regime knew this tactic, and they used it to blindside a whole nation in the 1930s. We see this tactic again surfacing in the nations through mistruth and repetition. It is a war of attrition, which is very hard to stop, but we must stop it. Because if we do not educate our young people about what can happen when this tactic is used by radicals, we have lost them to the fate of indifference. The same indifference that leads and led to the Holocaust. 80 years ago, the British stood up against this tyranny. And along with other nations, they set free many who were set for extermination. Those British and Allied forces liberated Bergen-Belsen concentration camp on the 15th of this month in 1945 and set free many who would be instrumental in ensuring Jewish life in the Middle East for decades to come. This is a fact that many ignore. The same Middle East where their ancestors came from. Jews came from an area known by many as Palestine. No one would have thought it possible that 80 years after the Holocaust, crowds of people on the streets would once again be shouting death to the Jews and propagate the annihilation of Jewish life. On social media, hate speech knows no boundaries. Therefore, we must make a stand against this in every city and every nation to proclaim, we will not be silent. The March of Life started in Germany in 2007, where the first March of Life was held, walking the former 1940 Death March routes across Germany at the end of World War II. In the opposite spirit of those death marches, it became the March of Life. It has spread to over 25 nations and 500 cities over the last 18 years, with events on or around the time of Yom HaShoah. This year, the UK has again taken to the streets to make a stand against blatant anti-Semitism and to proclaim the right of the people of Israel to exist. I would again like to thank you all for your participation in this commemoration. I would now like to invite Kat Crawford to share about indifference and its consequences.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Lynn. Elie Wiesel, Holocaust survivor and author, said, "We must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference." Martin Niemöller, Holocaust survivor and pastor, said, "First they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me." His compatriot, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, anti-Nazi dissident and pastor who was executed in April 1945, said, "Silence in the face of evil is itself evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act." Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., civil rights activist and Baptist minister, sums it up succinctly. "In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends." One final note, there's a plaque over one of the huts in Auschwitz. It is inscribed with a powerful quote by philosopher George Santayana: "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kat. As Mike mentioned earlier, today we not only remember and mark Yom HaShoah, but we also mark the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Bergen-Belsen by our British Army. We are really honoured today to have the Army represented by the Senior Chaplain of the 38th Irish Brigade, Reverend Alan Cobain. Thank you, Alan.
When British and Canadian troops advanced on the camp at Bergen-Belsen, near Hanover, in April 1945, they were met with the full-blown horror of a Nazi death camp, a sea of human suffering, the systematic, planned killing of people in the name of the state and of a twisted ideology. Liberating troops found 13,000 unburied corpses, a further 60,000 emaciated, diseased, spectral-like survivors standing or sitting among them. The camp was found with all its grotesqueness still intact. Other camps further east, like Treblinka and Auschwitz, had either been emptied or destroyed by the Nazis to hide their crimes. But at Belsen, the structures, the evidence, the witnesses, the perpetrators, the victims remained indelible testimony to the human horror. Liberating troops all struggled to take in what they witnessed that day. Listen to the words of Lieutenant Colonel Taylor, 53rd Anti-Tank Regiment. As we walked down the main roadway of the camp, we were cheered by the internees and for the first time, we saw their condition. A great number of them were little more than living skeletons. There were men and women lying in heaps on both sides of the track. Others were walking slowly and aimlessly, vacant expressions on their starved faces. Arriving at the same time upon the scene was Captain Brian Bursettle, 2nd Army. He recounts, "We entered one hut, a flimsy wooden shack with windows broken, seam packed with men and women, most lying down. Couldn't tell which were dead and which were living. One died just as Jamie was talking to him, and another had died just before. Stench unbearable. And Jamie had to go out to be sick. He's a pretty tough, hardened old reporter, but he said he had never dreamed of anything like this." Emergency medical provision was organized under the direction of Brigadier Glyn Hughes, 2nd Army. Disease of all kinds was rife, and in a vast number of cases, it was difficult to tell which conditions predominated, whether it was typhus, starvation, tuberculosis, or a combination of all three, which was responsible for the shattered wrecks of human beings who formed the majority of the inmates. In addition, every variety of disease, infection, and surgical condition was to be found to a greater or less extent. There were no gas chambers at Bergen-Belsen. There didn't need to be. Cruelty and premeditated neglect accounted for 500 deaths per day while that camp endured.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Cobain. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard of Tommy Reichenthal. Tommy is the first generation survivor of Bergen-Belsen. We would have really loved to have Tommy here, and he's been here many, many times. But sadly, on this occasion, he's not strong enough to travel. But we have something even, again, precious, and that is his son, David, to share on behalf of the son of a survivor and also to share some of his father's story. Thank you, David Reichenthal.
My name is David Reichenthal. I am the son of Tommy Reichenthal. And just being able to say those words out loud is a miracle, because by every reasonable calculation, I should not exist. My dad was born in 1935 in a small village in what was then Czechoslovakia. He was a little boy with a bright smile. He had an elder brother, Mickey. He adored his mother, Judith, and his father, Arnold. They loved and protected him. He had cousins, aunts, uncles, a family full of love, life, and laughter. And then Europe began to change. The 1930s whispered what would soon become screams. Whispers that said Jews were different, dangerous. Whispers that became laws, laws that became ghettos, ghettos that became cattle cars. And in cattle cars, they arrived in Bergen-Belsen. My dad, Mickey, their cousin Chava, Aunt Margot, their mother Judith, and grandmother Rosalia. He was 9 years old. 9. That's not history to me, that's my dad. A child, filthy and starving, surrounded by death, clinging to his mother, the person who protected him through it all, surviving alongside his older brother. They stayed together, they endured. While they survived together, 35 other members of my extended family were murdered in the Holocaust, the Shoah. Gone. Not just killed, but erased. No graves, no farewells, no future. And yet, from that unimaginable loss, our family somehow continued. But amidst the devastation, something survived, a reason to keep going. A thread remained, fragile but unbroken. This resilience echoes the words of Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and author of Man's Search for Meaning, who wrote, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how." My father came to Ireland and found his why. He began again. He found peace in the green fields and the kindness of strangers who became friends. He found love and married my mother Yvonne. He became a father to 3 sons, Gideon, Jonathan, and me. Each of us carries a part of his story. Each of us is living proof that life, once nearly extinguished, can continue, grow, and thrive. In September 2022, for the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Bergen-Belsen, my family and I traveled there with my dad. It was a deeply emotional journey. Not just a return to a place of suffering, but a reclaiming of memory of survival. I stood with my dad where his bunk once was. I looked at him, standing tall, and I tried to comprehend how the 9-year-old boy who once lay starving in that place could become the man beside me, a man of dignity, kindness, and courage. I will never forget that moment. Now, as he approaches his 90th birthday, my father remains a living, breathing witness to one of humanity's darkest chapters and one of its greatest acts of resilience. When I think of everything he went through, everything he lost, everything he was forced to endure, every humiliation, every loss that could have broken him and yet didn't. The fact that I'm here reminds me of something the writer Bill Bryson wrote that has stayed with me. You are the product of millions of generations of survivors, survivors every one. Not a single one of your ancestors died young or childless. All of them, through the most tumultuous conditions imaginable, managed to perpetuate the line that ended miraculously in you, miraculously in me. That fragile line, battered, miraculous line, came within a hair's breadth of ending in Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. But it didn't, because my father refused to die, and later he refused to be silent. He has told his story to thousands. He has stood in classrooms, on stages. He has sat with teenagers and explained what it feels like to be hunted for who you are. Not because he wanted pity, but because he wanted better. He wanted to protect your children, my children, all of us. He believes that telling the truth, even when it hurts, is an act of love and of courage. And still he tells it with quiet, unwavering strength. Because he knows, and I know, that today in 2025, Europe feels worryingly familiar. I hear old words dressed in new slogans. I see graffiti. I see people once again looking for someone to blame. And I feel that cold wind, the same wind that blew through 1930s Europe, rising again. My father always says, hate doesn't start with the gas chambers, it starts with words. We must listen for those words. We must challenge them. We must not look away. Because I am not a footnote in history. I'm not a statistic. I'm here only because love outlived hate. And that is the greatest victory of all. So I will not be silent. Instead, I will honor my father, not just with memory, but with action. Never again is not a slogan, it is a promise to the memory of the 6 million Jews who were murdered, and a reminder that even in our generation, we have seen how quickly safety can shatter. To the 35 of my family, my cousins, aunts, uncles erased, but never forgotten. To those who survived like my father and still carry the weight of that horror, it is a promise to the Jewish people whose safety can never again be taken for granted, and to the generations growing up now that they may never have to walk through that same darkness, that they will inherit a world that remembers and responds with courage and compassion. If my dad could survive Bergen-Belsen, if he can speak his truth with grace and courage over 80 years later, then we can find the strength to stand up, to speak out, to protect one another. That is how we honor the miracle. I am David, son of Tommy, living proof that even the darkest chapters can give rise to light. Thank you.
I fly, you are still beside me. Or in death's dark shadows lie, you will stay close by me. If I flee on morning wings, far across the gray sea, even there your hand will lead, your right hand will guide me.
I'm now going to read my dad's first-hand account of a day in Bergen-Belsen. It is the beginning of December 1944. We are already used to the daily routine, which begins with a roll call early in the morning. It is very cold this morning with a thin sheet of snow on the ground. It is the duty of my Aunt Margot to assemble everybody on time and line us up into 4 rows for the roll call. Margot was given this job of block altest, the eldest in the block, in other words, the leader responsible for everything that happens within our block, barrack number 207. I remember the first day of our arrival at the camp on the 9th of November 1944, when my Aunt Margot was given the title Block Altest. After a grueling cattle cart train trip of 7 days and nights, we arrived at this hell of a place called Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. We were called to the first roll call. Our group consisted of grandmothers, mothers, and children. Nobody knew what to do, so my Aunt Margot began to push people into place to form a 4-row assembly. My aunt had always leadership qualities. A group of SS officers looked on. When most of us stood in the 4-row formation, one of the officers called my aunt. "You speak German?" "Yeah," she answered in German. The officer continued, "Well, from today you will be the Block Altest. Your responsibility will be to have the roll call ready every morning on time, also collection of food from the kitchen and distribution of food, cleanliness and order within the block. No person is permitted to approach or speak directly to the supervisor. It is you that will convey any problem to the supervisors. You will also be responsible for everything that occurs on the block." The instruction ended with a stark warning. If your responsibilities fail, you will be severely punished. All these instructions were given in a threatening tone. The only good thing was that due to the new position of my Aunt Margot, we received a small separate room at the entrance to the block. The room consisted of 6 beds, which meant that one was for Margot, the second was for my grandmother Rosalia, then cousin Chavez, next bed to my mother, next bed was mine, followed by my brother's Mickey. As mentioned, this particular morning in December was very cold. Usually it took a long time for our SS supervisors to arrive to commence the roll call. Whilst we were waiting for the SS supervisors, I noticed that not far from our block, new buildings were built, obviously for new prisoner arrivals. It was Sunday, so nobody was on the building site. The ground was covered with a thin layer of snow, and many pieces of woodcut were protruding from the snow. I nudged my brother and pointed to the woodcuts. We had a small steel stove in our room, but it was useless as we had no wood. I suggested to him after the roll call, when the SS supervisors were gone, we could get some of the woodcuts to heat the room. Our names were no longer used. Instead, we were each given a number, which was displayed on the left side of our clothing. I don't remember my number, only that it had 6 digits. The roll call began by calling our numbers. When my number was called, I said yeah. The roll call could last for an hour or more. We had endured the freezing cold. It was all a type of torture. Nobody could escape the concentration camp. At every 300 meters on the perimeter, there was a watchtower with SS guards with machine guns. Finally, the roll call and inspections were over. We ran back to our room to wrap ourselves in blankets to get warm. After a while of sitting and warming ourselves, Mickey and I looked at each other and indicated that we should go out and get some woodcuts. We went out. It was very quiet. We looked around and noticed there was nobody at the building site because it was Sunday. We ran across to the building site and began to gather woodcuts. Once we couldn't carry any more, we proceeded to go to our block. Suddenly, from a distance, we heard someone calling, "Halt! Halt!" It was an SS female guard. We took off and ran as fast as we could. All along, we heard more calls, "Halt!" We reached our room and threw the woodcut under my brother's bed. All this was witnessed in silence by our family. We were out of breath and couldn't explain ourselves. Minutes passed when a very threatening voice called from outside, "Block Altest." Margot jumped off her bed and ran outside to face the angry SS guard. "I just saw 2 boys stealing wood from the building site and they ran into your block. I must find these thieves right away." She pushed my aunt out of the way and came to our room, which was situated on the right side, followed by Margot. As the room had no furniture but the beds, the SS guard proceeded to look under each bed. The first bed belonged to Margot. The SS guard bent down and lifted the blanket which hung over the bed to the floor. This was the way we had to make our beds, with the blanket hanging over to the floor. There was nothing under Margot's bed. The guard went to the next bed in which my grandmother slept. The guard again bent down and lifted the blanket, but again found nothing. The next bed was my cousin Chava's. There was nothing found again. Now the tension in the room became intense. I was shaking with fear. What will happen when the guard finds the wood under Mickey's bed? The next bed was my mother's. The guard bent down, lifted the blanket, and again drew a blank. There was nothing there. I was thinking about my brother. When the guard finds the wood, he will be very severely punished by the guard, beating and kicking him, witnessed by all of us outside as a warning. He might even be killed. My bed is the next. The procedure is the same, and she finds nothing. Now is the moment we are all dreading. The wood is under Mickey's bed. The SS guard straightens herself up from my bed inspection, and instead of going to Mickey's bed, she looks around the room and says, "Das nix." There is nothing, and walks out of the room, followed by Margot. Needless to say, she didn't find the wood in the community bedrooms. And so we survived another day.
Thank you so much, David. These memories are so precious, and we commit to carrying that torch of memory. I think it's so important. And thank you for traveling here to be with us. I would now like to welcome Sarah Beerschmidt, and Sarah has come from Germany today to be with us. And she is part of March of Life in Germany. Thank you, Sarah.
Hello, my name is Sarah. I'm 33 years old, and I work as a lawyer in the administration of a state university in Stuttgart, Germany. Before I started my research into the history of my family and what they did during the Second World War, I always thought they were just normal people. I never really connected them to the atrocities that happened during the Holocaust. One part of my family, from my father's side, is from Celle, which is about 20 kilometers from the concentration camp Bergen-Belsen. A lot of the trains transporting the prisoners went through Celle, going to Bergen-Belsen. Everybody knew about the camp and the prisoners. Recently, I learned about an occurrence in Celle which took place 3 days before the British military arrived. After a bomb hit a train transporting prisoners to Bergen-Belsen, the surviving prisoners tried to flee into the woods surrounding the city. Instead of just letting them go, the whole city of Celle started hunting the prisoners, either killing them right where they found them or leading them by foot to Bergen-Belsen. Part of the hunting group were the normal citizens living in Celle. The Hitler Youth, which my grandfather was part of, was instrumental in hunting and locking people into cellars where most of them starved to death. My family, whom I thought was just living under the Nazi system, became an active part of the Nazi perpetrators. And I am deeply sorry for what they did and what my family did to the Jewish people and those prisoners. Finding out about that history and the part my family played in it broke my heart and made me realize that if I stayed silent, I will become part of the same system that my great-grandparents and grandparents were part of. The same conformity with society and distance to other people's situation was in me. Even though I knew a lot about the history of the Holocaust, there was always a coldness and an indifference when it came to anti-Semitic jokes in school or at university, for example. When it came to jokes about Polish people or Eastern Europeans, it was me who told those jokes. I never cared about how it made them feel to be joked about. The same indifference and coldness that my family had against Jewish people and Eastern Europeans was in me. I would have been someone who would have helped hunting for those prisoners that time in Celle. I was deeply shocked about myself, and I am sincerely sorry for every humiliating and hateful word and action that I spoke or did. It broke my heart to know that I would have never been better than all the Germans living under the Nazi regime. Facing that truth, I decided to raise my voice and stand with the Jewish people and with Israel. I will not stay silent at a time where Jewish people are threatened again and again, and I will stand up against anti-Semitism and hatred against Jews.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Unlike International Holocaust Memorial Day in January, which marks the liberation of Auschwitz and is observed by the world, Yom HaShoah is a day for the Jewish community to remember and mourn. Today we stand together, Jews, Christians, other faiths, and none. It also marks the anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising and its martyrs and heroes. Remembrance is not passive, it's a call to action. We must never forget. We must not be silent. On the 7th of October 2023, the worst massacre of Jews took place since the Shoah. Hamas terrorists murdered just under 1,200 people, injuring over 4,000, kidnapping 251 hostages, including 18 British nationals. In March of this year, a cross-party commission of British parliamentarians released the 7th of October parliamentary report. One of the reasons for this report was for fighting denial and misinformation. Within hours of the attack, conspiracy theories sought to deny massacres had even taken place. Lord Roberts, who chaired the report, drew a direct parallel between October 7th denial and Holocaust denial. The report serves as a historical record of indisputable facts based on eyewitness testimony, forensic evidence, and footage filmed by the perpetrators themselves. At the time of this report, the 18 UK victims were officially named. Today, we will remember them during the reading of names. Just like the martyrs of the Warsaw Ghetto, our Allied soldiers, the resistance fighters, and the many others we may never know about, those who went above and beyond, giving their lives for others, I would like to mention in particular 4 of the UK victims. Sergeant Nathaniel Young made Aliyah from London in 2023 and joined the IDF. On October the 7th, he fought bravely against the terrorists near Kibbutz Zakim, saving lives before being killed himself in battle. Sergeant Major Debbie Abraham was a police officer stationed at the Nova Festival. Despite the imminent threat, she stayed at her post, continuing to evacuate civilians, set up roadblocks, until she was killed. Major Benjamin Trakanensky, living in Tel Aviv, rushed to Kibbutz Be'eri to help rescue civilians. His unit was among the first to respond. He was killed while returning to the kibbutz to save more lives. Sergeant Joseph Malaki Gudalia made 4 trips back to kibbutz Kfar Aza to rescue hostages and evacuate the wounded. On the 4th return, a grenade hit his car and he was killed. May their memories be a blessing. We will now begin the formal memorial. I would like to invite the Yerka Olahova to sing Vei She'amda. Vei She'amda is taken from the Passover liturgy. This is the English translation. And it is this promise that has stood by our ancestors and for us. And not only one enemy has risen against us to destroy us, but in every generation they rise up to destroy us. But the Holy One, blessed is He, delivers us from their hands. Thank you.
והיא שעמדה לאבותינו, והיא שעמדה לאבותינו ולנו, שלא ואחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלותנו, עמד עלינו לכלותנו, והיא שעמדה לאבותינו, והיא שעמדה לאבותינו ולנו, שלא ואחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלותנו, עמד עלינו לכלותנו, והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו, מצילנו מידם, והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו, מצילנו מידם. והיא שעמדה לאבותינו, והיא שעמדה לאבותינו ולנו, שלא לאחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלותנו, עמד עלינו לכלותנו, והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו, מצילנו מידם, והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו, מצילנו מידם, שלא אחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלותנו, לכלותנו, והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו, והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו מידם. והקדוש ברוך הוא Matilenu, Matilenu, miadam, v'akadosh barku, Matilenu, Matilenu, miadam. Shalom Israel.
Thank you so much, Fiacre. I would now like to invite David Reichenthal and Shoshana. We would light 2 candles today. One will be lit by David Reichenthal. Shoshana, do you want to come? To remember the 6 million that were murdered in the Shoah. The second candle will be lit to remember those that were murdered on the 7th of October. Read the names and invite Melvin Goldberger, Riv Kesselman, and Sejun Draconin.
We will remember Malvina Stern Goldberger, murdered in Belzec, 6th of June, 1942. Herman Goldberger, murdered in Belzec, 6th of June, 1942. Solomon Vax, Buchenwald, date unknown. Bella Minatzin Milner, Auschwitz, 28th of June, 1943. Leib Milner, Auschwitz, 28th of June, 1943. Jacques Milner, Auschwitz, February 1943. Morris Milner, Auschwitz, June 1943. Hersh Tsivian, Resnekne, Latvia, 1941. Ruben Katzen, Telslai, Lithuania, 1941. Hilda Frankel, Belarus, 1942. Sigmund Frankel, Belarus, 1942. Kurt Frankel, Belarus, 1942. Walter Frankel, Belarus, 1942. Herbert Frankel, Belarus, 1942. Fritz Frankel, Belarus, 1942. Leopold Kessler, Vienna. Eugene Mendel, Vienna. Anna Schmelkes, Vienna. Fritz Belitz, Vienna. Stella Reiner, née Sekulis, Yugoslavia. Hans Reiner, Yugoslavia. Lucy Reiner, Yugoslavia. Macha Bloch, Danzig, Poland. Michal Zachnik, Danzig, Poland. Etuchna Rosenberg, Danzig, Poland. Rysenka Rosenberg, Danzig, Poland. Helena Bloch, Danzig, Poland. Nathan Cohen, Vienna, 1943. Rosalie Cohen, Vienna, 1943. Baruch Joseph Schmidt, Lubin, Poland. Barcha Schmidt, Lubin, Poland, plus 3 children perished with them.
We will remember them. Rosalind Shomovich, born Slovakia, murdered Bergen-Belsen, 1945. Giza Shomovich Suri, born in Slovakia, and Oka Shomovich, born in Slovakia, murdered in Birkenwald, 1944. Adele Freid, born in Slovakia, murdered in Auschwitz, 1944. Bella Freid, her husband, and their 2 daughters, Katarina and Agnes, murdered in Auschwitz, 1944. Julius Mayer, born in Slovakia, murdered in Birkenwald, 1944. Ezekiel Reichenau, born in Slovakia, murdered in Auschwitz, 1942. Katarina Reichenau, born in Slovakia, murdered in Auschwitz, 1942. Kalmar Reichenau, born in Slovakia, murdered in Auschwitz, 1942. Alash Reichenau, Ottawa, and Gitta, their children, born in Slovakia, murdered in Auschwitz, 1942. Desko Reichenau, born in Slovakia, murdered in Wardenklau, 1943. Aran Reichenau, her husband, Alt, Raka, and Paco, their children. Ranka Reichenau, her husband, Albert and Marta, their daughter. Ivoka Reichenau and her husband, Shen, and Gita, their daughter.
We remember the British victims of October the 7th, Alnur Shapira, who was murdered at the Nova Festival, Lian Sharabi from Kibbutz Be'eri, Noya Sharabi from Kibbutz Be'eri, Yahel Sharabi, Kibbutz Be'eri, Yanai Hetzroni, Gaza, Liel Hitzroni, Gaza, Bernard Cowan, Kibbutz Sufa, Nadav Popplewell, Gaza, Roy Pepe Popplewell, Kibbutz Nerim, Sergeant Nathaniel Young, Kibbutz Zikim, Danny Darlington, Kibbutz Nir Oz, Jake Marlowe, Nova Festival, Sergeant Major Devorah Debbie Abraham, Nova, Jonathan Yoni Rappaport, Kibbutz Be'eri, Major Benjamin Benji Chakaniski, Kibbutz Be'eri, Rotem Calderon, Kibbutz Be'eri, Sergeant Joseph Yosef Malachi Gedalia, Kibbutz Kfar Azar, and Dor Hanan Shafir, Kibbutz Nirim.
Good afternoon. I am Rabbi David Kale, MBE of the Belfast Jewish community, the one and only synagogue in the whole of Northern Ireland. I am now going to say in English, followed by a chant in Hebrew, a memorial prayer for all those who died in the Holocaust, as well as those who died on the 7th of October 2023. But we should also bear in mind Jewish people have been massacred from the time of the Crusades, and so we remember all of those that have died. As this is a memorial prayer, I would kindly ask you to stand for its recitation. O God, full of mercy, who dwells on high, grant proper rest on the wings of the divine presence, in the lofty levels of the holy and the pure ones, who shine like the glow of the firmament. For the souls of the holy and pure ones who are killed, murdered, slaughtered, burned, drowned and strangled in Auschwitz, Shlemeno, Treblinka, Sobibor, Madunik, Belzec, and Mali Trotznek, for the sanctification of your name through the hands of the German oppressors, as well as those who died on the 7th of October 2023, and those Jewish people who died in earlier generations. Everyone assembled here today is praying on their behalf in remembrance of their souls. May their resting place be in the Garden of Eden. May the Master of Mercy shelter them in the shelter of his wings for eternity, and may he bind their souls in the bond of life. The Lord is their heritage, and may they repose in peace on their resting place. And let us say, Amen. El mole rachamim shachen b'maroimim hamsei menachanachayna tachas kanfei ashchino malos kadoshim adoirim kazarakia mazhirim es nishmos acheinu achyoseinu asher nishpat damon kamayim v'she'avdu ba'aratzos tachas memsheles gemarnio ona bal harachamim hasirein b'seisei knofecha li'olamim u'saroir b'sarachayim es nishmasom Adonai hu nachlasom yanu b'shamish kavam v'noimar amen. Thank you. Can all be seated now.
I would now, I would now like to invite James Shell. James is actually, he'll probably explain himself. He's an American student at Queen's University, and it's really great that we were able to find someone like James. Someone who's standing for what we believe is right and true. And he's here to speak up today. Thank you, James.
Good afternoon, friends. I'm honored to speak to you at this time following Yom HaShoah. We are here because of a dark and bitter moment in history with enduring grief. But this time also is a big signal of redemption and healing. And for that, it is a precious time, and I'm glad to see you. My name is James Schell. I'm a student at Queen's University, Belfast, and a fellow at CAMRA UK. CAMRA being a company standing for the Committee for Accuracy in Middle Eastern Reporting and Analysis. And I'm here to just drive one point across to you that I pray you listen to dearly. And that is, we must be aware and receptive to the circulating narratives around us. This is one of the ways we remember what happened 80 years ago. We must be vigilant and understand that the Nazis themselves were masters of propaganda, and what started as subtle messaging became a terrifying regime whose name we now treat as a synonym for evil. Former Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams, noted worrisome echoes of 1930s Germany on British campuses. Friends, that was in 2016. Those echoes have become shouts on our doorstep, and we cannot be silent. I was distraught seeing the world's reaction onto October 7th. We had an opportunity for the world to come together and oppose terrorism. Instead, we saw many take to the streets in celebration, calling terrorism resistance. I've seen many anti-Israel protests since then, accusing the state of colonial oppression, genocide, and of just being a villain. These protests have neglected history and facts. I went to Israel myself last year to see if this was true, and I found a hurting but resilient community. I walked the grounds of the Nova Music Festival. I walked through the kibbutzes and the rubble of what used to be houses destroyed by Hamas on the 7th. I saw a reality that is laughably disconnected from the stories and the narratives that we are fed here today, especially on our campuses. This does not bring peace. These protests do nothing to reconcile the conflict out there. Instead, they're propelling lies and anti-Semitism, and they're forsaking the costly lessons we learned 80 years ago. Anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism, you'll hear some people say. And I'm here to tell you that that is a lie. Because when the evil of anti-Semitism is revealed, it hides by evolving. As Rabbi Sachs noted, Jews used to be hated for their religion. Then come World War II, they were hated for their ethnicity, and now they're hated for their nationalism. We must not fall prey to the dichotomy that you have to either hate Israel or else be supporting genocide, because it simply is not true. We must understand the influences around us, because we are human. We are still vulnerable to propaganda today, and as a community, we must work together for truth. Now, it looks different now than it did back in the 1930s, because now we live in a world of the internet and social media. And with that technology, information has become cheap, easily falsified, and then weaponized. We must understand that the internet is no grounds of neutrality, but we have sponsors, state sponsors such as Qatar and Iran, strategically pushing certain messaging throughout the West onto our campuses. This is not without hope, though. I don't think it's controversial to say we ought to love our neighbor and we should allow the Jewish communities to feel safe amongst our own. We acknowledge this danger, but there are those of us fighting against it. CAMRA has a network of students across America and the UK working on their campuses, hosting events, and writing papers to bring out the truth. But most of all, and the greatest hope I have to tell you, is that we do not need to answer these protests with our own aggressive slogans, hate, lies, and ignorance. We only have to push for truth. and the truth can fight for itself. So as a community, let's remember, let's stay vigilant, and regardless of our background, for our own health, we must not be silent. I'm very grateful for March of Life allowing me to speak here today, and for all of you for listening. I encourage you to keep this up, remember, and never let those lessons die. Thank you.
I should have really introduced David and Viarka. What they were singing was Shema Israel, the Guardian of Israel. And it's based on Psalm 121. A song of ascents. I will lift up my eyes to the mountains. From where does my help come? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot slip. Your keeper will not slumber. Behold, the keeper of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Adonai is your keeper. Adonai, your shadow at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. Adonai will protect you from all evil. He will guard your life. Adonai will watch over you, coming and your going, from this time forth and forevermore. I would now like to welcome Mr. Brian Kingston, MLA, to share a few words with us. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you and good afternoon, everyone. As a member of the Northern Ireland Assembly, I want to thank the organisers of today's March of Life and all who have contributed to our commemoration. As a DUP representative for North Belfast, we are honoured to host the Belfast Synagogue, and it's always a pleasure to attend events there with Reverend David Cale and the Hebrew congregation. I want to add my words of thanks to each and every one of you for your attendance today and for your support for this important event. Our message is clear that anti-Semitism is wrong, as is all forms of racism and religious hatred. Religious tolerance and political tolerance are cornerstones of every democracy. The Holocaust of European Jews is the most shocking atrocity in human history, and it must constantly remind us of what unconstrained intolerance, scapegoating, and hatred can lead to. It should greatly concern us, as we have heard today, that we have witnessed an increase in anti-Semitism following the attack by Hamas on Israel on the 7th of October 2023, which targeted in particular the Nova Music Festival. I have heard many speeches by elected representatives regarding the ongoing situation since that date, and I despair at the lack of balance in many of those speeches, including ones here at City Hall. Words have consequences, and too many have chosen to speak irresponsibly and in a manner which has acted to increase anti-Semitism and to damage community relations here in Northern Ireland. No country and no people is above criticism and scrutiny of its actions, but no democracy has been singled out for more politically motivated criticism than the State of Israel. Israel exists in a region containing many authoritarian and dangerous regimes, many of which use hostility towards Israel to distract attention from their own oppression and lack of democracy. There must be no justification for the use of terrorism, whether against Israel or here in Northern Ireland or elsewhere in the world. Before October the 7th, a number of Arab countries were moving to normalise relations with the State of Israel. I am in no doubt that that was a major reason why Hamas launched that diabolical attack, in order to provoke a security response and to destabilise those improving relations. We all long to see peace restored, and I call again for the immediate release of the remaining Israeli hostages held captive to this day in Gaza. Our march today reminds us, is a warning from history, and reminds us how intolerance, scapegoating, and the cultivation of hatred can lead to genocide and led to the Holocaust, the greatest act of evil in the history of humankind. It is important that we remember these past horrors for vigilance against future atrocities. and because the final stage in every genocide is denial. So we say again, never forget, never again. We will not be silent for a better future for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. I would like to invite Mrs. Sharon Locke, who many of you know, to give a very special tribute today.
It is an honour to have been asked to pay tribute to Ronnie Appleton, Halav Hashalom, who passed away a few weeks ago, leaving a huge hole in our community. Ronnie was the President Emeritus of the Belfast Jewish community, Vice President of the Council of Christians and Jews Northern Ireland. He was key to bringing Holocaust remembrance to Northern Ireland, and he sat on many other communities over the years. So how do you pay tribute to a man like Ronnie? Do I speak about his work, his faith, his family, his community, all of which were just parts of what made up the great person we knew, respected, and loved? What words can be used to describe Ronnie? Kind, thoughtful, sincere, honest, fair, humble, many, many more. Ronnie was not a large man in height, nor did he ever seek to be centre of attention. However, when Ronnie spoke, others listened. When Ronnie went somewhere, others followed. The things important to Ronnie became important to them. His passion, logic, and determination influenced all those around him. Ronnie reached heights in his career, taking on responsibilities that others would refuse out of fear for their lives and the lives of their families. Ronnie's search for the truth and his desire to protect those unable to protect themselves earned him the respect and trust of many across social divides. Within his community, Ronnie was known to be someone who could be depended upon, whether it was to attend an event, celebrate a simcha, or to support a friend. Ronnie's love of learning was also well known, and many of us had the privilege to gain further insights into our own studies, while Ronnie asked the rabbis questions we hadn't thought of, as he sought to understand the teaching of Judaism and to live his faith in strength, unity, and purpose. But the one thing most important to Ronnie was his family, his wife Shoshana and their 5 children. Ronnie's pride in Shoshana as the chair and co-founder of the Council of Christians and Jews Northern Ireland was obvious to anyone who saw them. And when he spoke of his children and grandchildren, his eyes lit with joy. So how do I pay tribute to a man like Ronnie Appleton? I can't. But we can, by continuing his legacy, following his example. Ronnie may not have been a giant of a man, but he was a giant among men. He made a difference in this world for the better. So can you.
In closing, ladies and gentlemen, I really want to thank the Belfast City Hall staff, especially Chris McClone and the security team headed by Sam Young and Ed Courtney, who have graciously facilitated this event over the years and again here today in Belfast. I'd also like to thank the police at Musgrave Street for providing protection and facilitation and presence through the streets of Belfast and here at City Hall. Please show your appreciation. I would like to thank all those that helped to make this happen this year. Our amazing March of Life team, Angie, Linda, Michelle, Anton, the amazing Howe family, John, Bev and Tuesday, to Sarah, who came all the way from Germany just for one day to share her family story, to David and Veronica for graciously sharing about Tommy's story, our amazing music team, David and Vierka, and to all those I can't mention for time's sake. You know who you are. Thank you to the Deputy Lieutenant Richard Yar, Rabbi Kale, Reverend Cobain, for giving your time and input to make this event memorable. We must educate our younger generation what happens when indifference and silence is allowed to overshadow the goodwill of good people. This always ends in darkness. In the words of the founder of the March of Life, Pastor Job Spittner, and to reiterate what David said with Tommy's quotes, and I quote, "The Holocaust did not begin with the burning down of synagogues. It began with words. And it became possible because too many remained silent." Albert Einstein was probably one of the most famous physicists of all time. In 1933, as a Jew, he had to flee from the Nazi regime, and he said, the world is not threatened by people who are evil, but by those who allow evil. This is why we say today, with all clarity, everyone who remains silent when Jews are attacked and threatened is complicit. Anyone who downplays or even applauds anti-Semitic hostility fraternizes with the spirit of the Nazi perpetrators of the Shoah. Yom HaShoah is not just a glance into the past. It is a mirror for our present. And it is a call to all of us. Look, listen, contradict, stand up, and declare openly together, we will not be silent. End quote. To end this commemoration, I would like to invite us all to sing Hatikva, translated the Hope. I wish you all a safe trip home and a blessed week ahead. Please stand if you are able. Thank you.
Dear